Unforgiveness is like weights. It'll add up over time. If you don't take care of it. Before you know it, it will weigh you down. Think it can? Jesus!
Give Tim a hand. I'm sorry, Benny the Bone Crusher. I didn't mean that. You guys don't know who he is yet. We haven't broken the disguise yet. Good morning, everyone. How's everyone doing? Good. Are you glad to be here? Good, because this morning we're going to talk about a subject that, as I studied, it's going to affect everybody in here this morning. If you're living, if you're breathing, if you're walking around on this earth, this is a subject that is going to be relevant to you. If you have relationships in this world between, if you're married or if you're single, it doesn't matter. If you communicate with someone in a week's time, this is going to affect you. Everyone in here this morning knows what it feels like to be hurt, right? Everyone knows what it feels like to be offended. Everyone in here. Everyone knows what it feels like to be cut to the core of who you are by someone. Maybe it's your friend, maybe it's someone you don't even know. But everyone here knows what it feels like to be talked to disrespectfully, saying things about you that you don't desire and you maybe not even deserve. And that causes us to have to do something that comes hard for some of us, especially me. And that is to forgive, right? I believe that every day there are things that happen to us that cause us to have to forgive. I think there's things that happen to us. I think the devil wakes up someone, and it could be the person laying next to you, but he wakes someone up with a demonic assignment on their life to get under your skin. I believe that is because if he can get you to be unforgiving, not to forgive, then he can get you to miss the mission that God has called you to do. What does the Bible say about forgiveness? If we don't forgive our fellow man, God won't forgive us. Is that right? But every day there's things that can happen to us. We live our life, we dialogue with people, we have communication, we have relationships with people, and things happen that cause us to be bitter. Right? It causes us to be angry. And if we don't watch it every day, that list of things, those lists of offenses, those lists of hurt, that get larger and larger and longer and longer. I've been there. I catch myself every once in a while getting into a funk of letting things pile up on me like, oh, he said this or she said that, he did this, he did that, they did this. And we keep piling it up, and it gets heavier, just like you've seen on the video, till one day we can't carry it. And yet God commands us, all throughout the Bible, to live above these offenses and above these issues that people do to us. Last week we talked on pride, and sometimes it's pride that keeps us from allowing us to forgive. But as we went going through these knockout series, this series, and as I was studying this subject of forgiveness, I found that there are areas in my life that I think I might have forgiven that I truly haven't because of some of the things out of the story that we're going to talk about. I want you to get your Bibles and I want you to turn to Genesis chapter 45. There's a story here that I want to talk about this morning, and there is a true display of forgiveness from a character there that I think we can learn a lot from here thousands of years later, 2017 at Light in the Valley. God calls us to do one of the most difficult things here on earth. If we're going to be followers of Jesus, if we're going to put that into effect back there, once again, love God, love people, what? Impact the world. If we're going to do that, then we have got to learn how to forgive. We've got to give the knockout punch to unforgiveness. And I think it's safe to say, maybe I'm the only one, and if I am, tell me afterwards, but maybe I'm the only one that forgiveness comes hard for. Maybe it's, I feel though it's safe to say that forgiveness is not easy for some of us, most of us. You say, I know I'm called to forgive, but he said this, she said that. I know that I'm called to let things go, and I know what my assignment is, but forgiving is not easy because why is forgiveness such a hard trait to acquire? I know in my life, if I just get personal, some hurts hurt more than others. Some hurts hurt more than others. Would you agree with that? There's some things that people have said about me, I've heard through the grapevine, you know, they mentioned this, Jimmy is this or Jimmy is that. That hurts, but it's not nearly as bad as some of the things that have happened in my life. And so I think the deeper the hurt, the more the hurt, the more substantial the hurt is, the harder it is to forgive. Would you agree with that? Or maybe it's repeat offenders. How many know we have those in our life? Like they say, oh, I'm so sorry, Jimmy, I'll never do that again. And you know next week they're going to do it again. And so you forgive them and you say, well, now, if they do it again the second time, I can forgive them the second time, but third time, I'm the one that's called foolish, right? That's what man says. But what does God say? What did Jesus say? 70 times 7. That's without an end, right? We forgive and forgive and forgive. It doesn't matter how many times it happens, but that's one reason that forgiveness can be hard is because we know the tendency of that particular individual that's maybe asked for forgiveness, and we know that with time he's going to do it again, she's going to do it again, they're going to do it again. And so we have a tough time forgiving, or maybe it's against our children. I know one thing, I'll stand up to bat any day for my kids. How many of you would? Please be honest. We love our kids. We're going to do everything we can to protect them. And sometimes when things come out about our kids, we stand up to defend them. And it's hard to forgive. Or maybe these people don't ask for forgiveness. And maybe they just go on through life like nothing ever happened. And you're wondering, when in the world are they going to ask me to forgive them? I will forgive them if they ask, but if they don't, I'm not. This isn't an altar call, but how many have been there? I've been there. Or maybe it's hard to forgive because you know this person plotted and planned very strategically what he or she or they were going to do against you, and they got it done, and it was majorly intrusive in your reputation. It ruined your reputation, or maybe they got it done, and you know it was pre-planned. You know there was a motive behind it. Maybe that's why it's hard to forgive. Maybe it's hard to forgive because of who did it. If your friends and your family hurt you, that's one thing. I mean, you have so much trust built up. These are the people that you live with your whole life. You hang out with on the weekends. You do everything together, and all of a sudden something happens, and it hurts. Why? I learned this years ago. The closest people to us hurt us the most. The closest people to you will hurt you the most. And in that whole realm of forgiveness, there's sometimes you say, well, you know what? I can forgive for everything, but you know what? I cannot forgive for this particular thing. I will take this to the grave with me. I'm not going to forgive him for that. That hurt too bad. It was too raw. And you know what? They knew better. And so we say, I'll never forgive. How many of you were taught to forgive and what? What's the other? Forgive and what? How many were taught that? I was. And I'm here to tell you, it's humanly impossible to do. About now, some of you want to walk out, that's fine, I don't care. But it's humanly impossible to forgive and completely forget that ever happened. I'm living proof. There's things that happen in my life that I will never, ever, ever forget. But I can tell you this, I walk in victory because I forgave. There's a difference. So there is a difference between forgiving and forgetting. And I like when my children do something against each other, if they say, I forgive you, and add completely. I forgive you completely. You know why? Because there puts closure to it that normally isn't there in I forgive. But there's some of us that things happened 20 years ago, and it feels like it happened last night. You won't forget it, but you can forgive. We want to go into Bible today, and we want to study how can we forgive. How can we give a knockout punch to unforgiveness? Because if we have unforgiveness in our lives, there's so many. If Satan gets a little bit of a foothold in our life with unforgiveness, it opens the door to so many more things. You have a question, well, if I can remember, does that mean I forgive? Did I not forgive him? Because I think about it sometimes. And if I get upset about it, does that mean I didn't forgive? When I see this person, when I see these people, when I see him or her, and these feelings, these emotions come back up, does that mean I didn't forgive? What does true forgiveness look like? I learned this from Phil. True forgiveness is not a feeling. It's a choice. And sometimes when you choose to forgive, your feeling has not the emotional part of that choice. There's an emotion involved in every choice you make. But the emotional part of that choice that you choose to forgive, sometimes your emotions aren't caught up with that. Sometimes it takes weeks. Sometimes it takes months. Sometimes it takes years. But you know what? When you make that decision, you make that choice to forgive, you have grounds that Satan can't take you back further than that. Right? Amen? You make the choice to forgive and your emotions might not be caught up to it. That's one thing. At least you made the choice to forgive. You're on your way to forgiveness. We need to choose to forgive. I want you to turn your Bibles to Genesis chapter 45. I am using the King James Version, the New King James Version. Actually, it's the King James Version and the Amplified. So I'll do the King James Version. Genesis chapter 45, I want you to read with me from 1 to verse 20. There's a couple things. I'm not going to read it again, but I want you to pay attention as we read this. There's certain things that are happening here in this story that I'm going to bring out that are descriptions or examples of true forgiveness. It's about Joseph. Then Joseph could not refrain himself before all them that stood by him. Just hang with me. After I'm done reading this, I'm going to give you the setup. I'm going to give you the surroundings of what happened to get Joseph into this position, okay? But right now we're going to read chapter 45, verse 1 through 20. Then Joseph could not refrain himself before all of them that stood by him, and he cried, "Cause every man to go out from me," and there stood no man with him, while Joseph made himself known unto his brethren. And he wept aloud, and the Egyptians and the house of Pharaoh heard. Verse 3, and Joseph said unto his brethren, I am Joseph. Doth my father yet live? And his brothers could not answer him, for they were troubled at his presence. And Joseph said unto his brethren, Come near to me, I pray you. And they came near, and he said, I am Joseph, your brother, whom you sold into Egypt. Now therefore be not grieved, nor angry with yourselves that you sold me hither, for God did send me before you to preserve life. Verse 6, for these 2 years hath the famine been in the land, and yet there are 5 years in which there shall be no earing or harvest. And God sent me before you to preserve you a posterity in the earth, and to save your lives by a great deliverance. So now it was not you that sent me hither, but God. And he hath made me a father to Pharaoh, and lord of all his house, and a ruler throughout all the land of Egypt. Verse 9, haste ye, and go to my father, and say unto him, Thus saith thy son Joseph, God hath made me lord of all Egypt. Come down unto me, tarry not. And thou shalt dwell in the land of Goshen, and thou shalt be near unto me, thou and thy children, and thy children's children, and thy flocks, and thy herds, and all that thou hast. and there will I nourish thee. For yet there are 5 years of famine, lest thou and thy household and all that thou hast come to poverty. Verse 12, and behold, your eyes see, and the eyes of your brother Benjamin, that it is my mouth that speaketh unto you. And you shall tell my father all of my glory in Egypt, all that you have seen, and ye shall haste and bring down my father hither. And he fell upon his brother Benjamin's neck and wept. Benjamin wept upon his neck. Moreover, he kissed all his brethren and wept upon them. After that his brethren talked with him. And the fame thereof was heard in Pharaoh's house, saying, Joseph's brethren are come. And it pleased Pharaoh well, and his servants. Verse 17, and Pharaoh said unto Joseph, say unto thy brethren, this do ye, lade your beasts and go. Get you unto the land of Canaan, and take your father and your households, and come unto me. And I will give you the good of the land of Egypt, and ye shall eat the fat of the land. Now thou art commanded, this do ye, take ye wagons out of the land of Egypt for your little ones and for your wives, and bring your father and come. Last verse, 20. Also regard not your stuff, for the good of the land of Egypt is yours. That was long, wasn't it? Y'all anybody sleeping? Wake up, because I'm about to talk again. I'll give you a little background of Joseph. How did he get into this position is quite interesting. Joseph was one of 12 sons that were born to Jacob. Interesting enough, Jacob, these 12 sons were born out of 4 different women. Jacob was married to 2, and he had 2 maids. Each one of them had a maidservant. And they all had kids for him. So he was married to Leah, and he was married to Rachel. Rachel happened to be Jacob's favorite. She was his favorite, and she had 2 sons. She had 2 of the youngest sons of these 12. The first one was Joseph, and the very last one was Benjamin. And Jacob, because Rachel was his favorite, he tended to favor Joseph. And so the 10 older brothers follow close. There was 10 above there, then it was Joseph, and then there was Benjamin, right? So the 10 above them, they had to do all the work. They were out on the fields, and they were out making hay and planting the crops and doing the things that farmers do. And they were taking care of all the animals and doing the hard, strenuous, sweaty labor. And this caused, meanwhile, Joseph was at home playing his Xbox, I'm sure, and chilling. Netflix and chill, maybe. I don't know. Right? He had it made. He was sitting at home. He had it made, and this caused the 10 older brothers to hate him. The Bible says they hated Joseph. There was 2 reasons that I feel like they hated him. First of all, it was visibly obvious that Jacob favored him due to the fact that he didn't make him go out into the fields. He left him at home. The other fact was, you guys all know the story about the coat of what? Many colors, right. So Jacob went and made this obnoxious coat with a bunch of bling on it, bunch of different colors. Probably, maybe it's a Michael Jackson suit, I don't know. But he had this awesome, crazy-looking coat, and it fit Joseph's personality, because the other reason that the brothers hated him so bad is because he was a visionary. He was a dreamer. And he actually had a dream one time, and in his dream it was that all 10 of the brothers would all 11 of them would bow to him. It wasn't good enough that he had the dream. He had to tell them that he had the dream. And this really got him cooking. They were like, how can this kid come in here wearing his obnoxious coat and being the dad's favorite? He sits on the couch all day. I don't know for sure, but he sits on the couch all day and plays Xbox. He's better at any of the games than we are. We're out here working. Meanwhile, he's got this plush lifestyle. They hated him. One day, Jacob sends Joseph to check on the brothers. He said, Joseph, I want you to go out. I want you to check, make sure that all the fields are being planted the way that I want them. I want you to make sure that all the animals are being taken care of. I want you to go check on your brothers, and I want you to bring word back to me. Tell me how they're doing. And as he was walking out towards the plains where the brothers were, they seen him coming. They couldn't miss him. The big coat of many colors, here he comes. Here comes that spoiled, rotten little brat that we call Joseph. And they make a plot and they start plotting. Judah goes, hey, why don't we kill him? Reuben goes, nah, why don't we throw him in a pit? The next caravan of people that come through will sell him and we'll make money off him. We'll sell him as a slave. And so that's what they did. They spared his life, but they took him, they tied him up, they throw him in a pit, and they wait. And it wasn't long. Here comes a caravan of leaders, and they were from Egypt. And who was the guy in there? Anybody know? Potiphar, right? And so they sell him to Potiphar. They take this beautiful coat of many colors, they tear it all up, they trample it in the mud and in the dirt, they take animal blood, pour it on the coat, and they send the coat back to Jacob. And they said, sorry, your favorite son is deceased. The animals got him. Boo-hoo. Right? Meanwhile, Joseph is on a wagon with his hands bound, his feet bound, and he is in slavery, headed towards Egypt. And when he gets there, he gets to be in Potiphar's kingdom. He's working in Potiphar's house. And as he's working his way to some sort of freedom, the Bible says he was a good-looking man, and Potiphar's wife hit on him. She came on to him. And he said, no, I can't do this. One day when Potiphar was out of the house, he said, no, I can't do this. It angered her, and so she hollers through the courtyard, through the corridor, rape, rape, Joseph tried to rape me. And guess what? They come, they got him, they accused, they found him guilty, convicted him of the crime that he had not done, and threw him in prison. This wasn't a 30-day misdemeanor. This was a long time. He ended up being in prison for something he didn't do for 20 years. Now I want you to start imagining that if you were in captivity in a prison doing time for something you did not do for 20 years, what were the thoughts that would start going through your brain? Joseph sat there, and I'm sure these emotions started coming to him. I'm sure it did. In fact, this is not in the story, but not what I want to say, but while he was in there, Potiphar's cupbearer and I think the baker were thrown into prison. And while they were in there, the one of them had a dream, and Joseph interprets the thing, and he was right. And he goes, hey, when you get out of here, he told the cupbearer, he said, when you get out of here, make sure you tell Potiphar I'm still in here. I didn't do it. He said, tell him I'm in here. Tell him to come get me. The cupbearer gets back out. The baker gets killed. Cupbearer gets back out, and he forgets. He starts working for Potiphar again. Everything's good. He forgets about Joseph, and so he does more time that he didn't deserve, undeserved time. And as he's sitting there, he's thinking about he's being stripped from his family. He was threatened to be killed by his own brothers. He was lied about by Potiphar's wife. He was rejected by the cupbearer. And all of this is happening to me. Can you imagine this? He's thinking, all of this has happened to me because of my brothers. My own blood brothers. That's why this is all happening to me. Can you imagine the resentment and the anger? What if that was me? What would I do? I've been in those situations. I haven't been in prison for 20 years, but I've been in those situations where I thought, man, when this is over, oh yeah, I'm going to get that guy. Right? Oh, I can't wait. Revenge is so sweet. And I'm sure those thoughts crossed Joseph's mind. One day, Pharaoh had a dream nobody could interpret. sends for Joseph, 20 years after he was incarcerated now. And Joseph's brought before him, and he interprets the dream, and all of a sudden, Pharaoh starts favoring Joseph again. And in 2 years' time, from the time he released him out of prison and he interpreted the dream, in 2 years' time, he jumped the ranks, he climbed the ranks to being prime minister of Egypt. Second in command in all of the land, Joseph. Think about it. The pit, prison, palace. Follow me close. Had all the power, most of the power in all of the land of Egypt. As God designed it, a famine hit the land. And in Canaan, they were having it really, really rough. Now, Canaan is back where Joseph's family lived. Jacob and all the brothers lived back in Canaan. And one day, Jacob sends his boys, the 10 boys, the very 10 that were angry at Joseph, the very 10 that threatened to kill him, those same men that sold him into slavery, they're coming into Egypt, and guess what they need? They need food. And guess who they're getting it from? Guess who they got to go through to get it? You know? Joseph. 22 years of this anxiety, 22 years of these thoughts going through his mind as he's in prison. In prison, we know ain't a pretty place to be. And I'm sure in prison he's not learning how to be very forgiving, but maybe he is. But the majority of them in there don't. He has all these thoughts running through his mind, and here come these 10 men that wronged him. Now they need him. What if this was me? What if this was you? I want you to imagine, what would you do? Oh, this is the moment look at this. Turnabout is fair play, right? The law of karma is real. I have control of this situation. I can make you pay. Oh, that had to feel good for him, didn't it? But it's in this moment, guys, that Joseph teaches us so many thousand years later how to truly forgive it. And I want to show them to you. When they did come, he did tell them, he said, we just read it. He said, you are the ones that sold me into Egypt, into slavery. He even cried in their presence. And he lets them know what they did. He tells them how bad it hurt. He lets them know how bad they hurt him. True forgiveness doesn't mean that you have to act like it never happened. I think if we go back one Sunday to pride, maybe that pride issue is what keeps us from, we build these walls of pride around us and say, you know what? Sticks and stones may break my bones, but what? Somebody finish it. Words will never, oh, y'all know it. Thank you. That's a pride statement, in my opinion, because words do hurt. There are things that do hurt, and I think it's okay that we admit it. I think the road to true forgiveness is actually admitting, that hurt me. That was not nice what you did and what you said to me. So I don't think it's a very Christian act to excuse it and just act like it never happened and pretend like nothing was ever wrong. True forgiveness actually requires acknowledging that hurt and acknowledging the wrong that people have done towards us. You cannot forgive what you're lying to yourself about. You keep telling yourself that didn't hurt, you'll never forgive. We're meant for relationship. God created us for relationship, and relationship is a clear conscience. Relationship is free of unforgiveness. There's 4 things that Joseph does, and I want to take you back to chapter 45. That brings us to 45. That whole story brings us to what we just read. And I want you to notice that when he gets ready to reveal himself to his brothers, there's one thing that he does that's very specific, I feel. I feel like God put it in the Bible for us, and it's something that I am not good at. I talked to my wife about this message, and she raised her eyebrows at me. But what did he ask everybody else that was in the room, what did he say to them? Leave. Why? Because what had happened between him and his brothers was between him and his brothers. And he did not want the whole entire kingdom to find out how wrong his brothers had treated him. And so he asked to be private. He didn't want to share the offense with other people. He wanted to take care of it with him and his brothers. And that's something I'm not good at. So the first sign of true forgiveness, number one, the first punch we can give unforgiveness is this: we won't recall or repeat offenses to others. Becky's raising her eyebrows at me again. That's hard for me. I got to tell somebody. That guy did that to me. He said that about me. She said that about me. Can you believe it? And so I go to Eli and I say, Eli, did you hear what Al did to me? Can you believe that? Jake, can you believe what Kevin said to me? And the first thing I'm trying to do is to get those guys on my side. I'm trying to throw Al and Kevin under the bus. I'm trying to ruin their reputation. I'm trying to harm any kind of character that they may have. And I'm trying to let everybody know what they did to me. Am I right? Or am I batting zero? This is right for me, okay? So y'all listen up. I preach to myself. All you're trying to do is punish them for the things that they did to you. You want to ruin their reputation. And I'll tell you, you can read the Bible front to back. There's no place in the world or in Scripture that it says that we're supposed to tell everybody the wrongs that people do to us. When someone offends us, there's two things that God judges. It's what they did to us and how you react to it. That's the only two things that get judged in a situation, in any relationship, anything that happens. What they did to you and how you respond to it. So Joseph asked everyone to leave. He didn't want Pharaoh to know. Pharaoh was top of the food chain, so to speak. He didn't want him to know what the brothers had did, because he knew that if Pharaoh would know what the brothers had done, it would change this whole situation. Pharaoh would have he had the potential to get angry and say, you know what? They did that to you? Get them out of here. Send them back to their poverty. But that's not what happened. You say, well, but it really hurt. I need closure. I need to talk to somebody. I'll challenge you. Talk to Jesus about it. I'll raise the eyebrows at me there. But we need to pray about it. We need to give that over to God. So the first sign of forgiveness is when we don't recall or repeat our offense to others. Number two is when I don't seek revenge or resent their blessings. Keep in mind, Joseph is the second most powerful man on the planet. And imagine what he could have done to his brothers. Imagine. I want you to think about it, the power that he had. He could have had them beaten. He could have had them convicted of whatever he would have wanted them to be convicted. He could have had them put in prison. He could have had them killed. And nothing, he wouldn't have had to worry about anything because of the position that he had in Egypt at the time. Would you agree? He could have done that. But how do we know Joseph didn't have revenge in his heart? Because of how he reacted in this situation. Because you cannot forgive those that are hurting you by hurting them. Okay? Hurting people, help me out. Hurting people, hurt people. So if Joseph wouldn't have put an end to it that day, this hurt would have went on and on and on and on for generations to come. It could have been all-out war. He could have caused a lot of grief. Revenge will not heal your hurt, and it will not change the person who hurt you. It will not ease the pain of the things that are going on in your life. Jesus teaches us to pray for them who despitefully use you. He doesn't say to pray about them. He says to pray for them. Meanwhile, Pharaoh hears that his brothers are in town, and he says, hey, let's give them of the good land. Let's give them a lot of food. Let's give them the best that Egypt has to offer. We will fill the wagons up with stuff. Go back and get your family and bring them all back. You're Joseph's brother. Your blood. Your relative. You go do that. We want to give you, we'll roll the red carpet out for you. And Joseph is not resentful at all. He's actually okay with the fact that they're getting blessed. And you know what? When you want to truly forgive somebody, you might have to be okay with the fact that they get blessed. They may never feel punishment the way that you think they should. I'll say it again. They may never get the punishment that you feel they should. They might walk around and walk away with their hands up, being blessed of God. Are you okay with that? Joseph was. Joseph was. Knocking out forgiveness. Number 2 was, don't be resentful when my offender gets blessed. Number 3, the point Joseph gives us is, don't rewind the offense or replay the emotion. Bible, it records in Bible, in Genesis chapter 42, 43, 45, and 46. It's 4 different times that Joseph meets his brothers in this whole transaction. 4 different scenarios. Okay? 42, in chapters 42, 43, 45, and 46. And only in chapter 45 does he bring it to their attention. He only mentions it one time. Yeah, I think it was a big deal. He asks everybody to leave the room. He cries. He goes over. He hugs them all. He kisses them all. I think those emotions were raw. I think it was a real deal. And I think it was a powerful, powerful moment in their family history, in their generation, right there. But you'll notice the next times that they meet, he never brings it back up. He said it once, he addressed the issue, and then he let it go. And you know what? True forgiveness is most clearly evident when we have to interact again with the offenders. Oh yeah, she's sitting in church. He's still at the job. They're going to be at the family reunions. I just heard this week where, gotta be careful how I say it. A girl's getting married and grandma's not invited. Yeah. You got to forgive. Like, where is this? How is that? And if grandma's coming, one of the sisters ain't coming. There are some people in your life that hurt you that you'll have to deal with again. You have to make a decision not to bring it up. Right? We have to check our emotions. Running out of time, I'm sorry. The 4th and final point that I want to make is the knockout punch for unforgiveness. This is what Joseph teaches us here in Genesis chapter 45. When Joseph reveals himself to his brothers, the knockout punch is this. You have to release them, the offender. You have to release them from the worry and remember it differently. You have to release them from the worry and remember it differently. When Joseph reveals himself from his brothers, you can read it here in chapter 45. It says they were afraid, they were scared, they were apprehensive. Oh my, this is the guy that we so desperately wronged. And now he is second in command in all of the land of Egypt. There is no end, there's no limits to what he could do to us right here, right now. And so they were scared, they were worried. They knew he had all the power. They knew that they had wronged him. And they were afraid. But the first thing he does is says, come here. Let me give you a hug and a kiss. It's okay. I forgive you, is what he was telling them. How many of you like, though, when somebody does something wrong to you, you kind of like the fact that you have the upper hand now And when you walk in, you're like, I hope they're worried about my next move, or you know what I'm talking about? Kind of feels good. Like, I hope they're losing sleep by worrying about what I'm going to do to get revenge. You been there? I've been there. I hope they tremble when they see me. I hope they're scared when I walk into the room. I hope I bring that air of arrogance along with me. Like, we're cultivating this stuff. We hope that it affects them. True forgiveness is, what I'm going to do is release you from fear of wondering what my next move will be. That's what Joseph did there. He released them of their worry. You say, how did he do it? Well, it's simple. It's like this. He remembers his story differently. He remembers his story differently. See, he's not going back and he's not thinking about all of the hurt that led for those 22 years. He's not thinking about all of the things that led him to this moment. He's not looking at it from a pain point of view. He might know that these are the things that happen, but in the Bible, in Genesis chapter 45, he tells his brothers, I know you sold me into slavery. I know that you thought about harming me, but God had a plan. He used me to bring life to you. He used me to bring prosperity to you. And he sent me out 22 years ahead of you. By allowing you to do what you did to me, I got into a position that I now turn around and hand down and I pull you up. And he says, but God did this for me. He took me from the pit to the prison to the palace, all for this moment right here in chapter 45. I believe that with my whole heart. And I believe that you are going through the very same thing. And I want you to be able to turn around and look at these things that people have done to offend you. And it's writing a story of your life. It did for me. And I want you to say, you know what? I know she hurt me. And I want you to take an eraser and I want you to take that period away and put a comma there and put two words behind it. I know she hurt me, but God. I know he cheated on me, but God. I know he ripped me off financially, but God has a plan for your life. And I'm telling you, he's not through with any of us. I know I had to do that. And it hurts. And it's hard. But you know what? There's a joy that is just incredible when you look back and you say, you know what? I know that those things strategically happen in my life to bring me to where I'm at. And he wants to do the same thing for you. And I'm not done. I know people are going to offend me. I know they are. And I know it's going to hurt. And I trust that I can turn around, erase the period behind it, put a comma and say, but God has a plan for my life. Can you do that this morning? Stand with me. As we knock out this unforgiveness, it's not a feeling, it's a decision. Keep things private. It's a decision to not get revenge. These are decisions. These are choices we have to make. It's a decision to pray for God to bless them. Hard to do. It's a decision to not keep bringing it up. And check your emotions. And to release them from their worry. It's a decision to let God start writing the story of your life. If we want to be true disciples, we have to believe that we have to forgive, and this is a choice that we make. And I'm not saying it's easy, but I'm saying it can be done. Let's bow our heads. Let's pray.